Every single day you wake up, whether you realize it or not, you are handed something incredibly powerful. Something invisible, something silent, something that doesn't announce itself with noise or celebration. You are handed a blank space, a fresh start, a new opportunity to decide who you are going to be. And most people don't even notice it. They wake up, they scroll, they rush, they react. They move through their day as if it's just another repeat of yesterday. As if nothing really matters that much. As if today is just something to get through so they can reach tomorrow. But here's the truth, tomorrow is built on what you do today. Not what you plan, not what you say, not what you wish, what you do. Every single day is a vote for the person you are becoming. And the question is, what are you voting for? Because it's not the big moments that define your life. It's not the once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. It's not the speeches, the applause, the recognition. Those are just highlights. They're the result. They're not the cause. The cause is the quiet decision you make when no one is watching. The cause is what you choose when it's inconvenient, when it's uncomfortable, when it's boring, when it feels like it doesn't matter. That's where your life is shaped. You see, we've been taught to wait for motivation, to wait for clarity, to wait until we feel ready. But the people who build extraordinary lives don't wait. They don't rely on feelings. They rely on standards. They decide ahead of time who they are. And then they show up like that person every single day. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, but consistently. Because consistency beats intensity every time. Anyone can have a good day. Anyone can feel motivated once in a while. Anyone can start strong. But very few people can keep going when the excitement fades. Very few people can wake up on an ordinary day with no applause, no recognition, no immediate reward, and still give their best effort. That's the difference. That's what separates people who wish from people who build. And the truth is, your life doesn't change in one moment. It changes in thousands of small ones. Small decisions, small actions, small choices that compound over time. The problem is, those small choices don't feel important in the moment. Skipping one workout doesn't seem like a big deal. Wasting one day doesn't seem like a big deal. Procrastinating one time doesn't seem like a big deal. But those one times add up. They become habits. They become patterns. They become your identity. And one day, you wake up and realize you've built a life you never intended to build. Not because you made one bad decision, but because you made 1,000 small ones. That's why every single day matters. Not because today has to be perfect, but because today counts. Today is shaping you. Right now in this moment, you are becoming someone. The question is, are you becoming someone by design or by default? Because if you don't decide who you want to be, the world will decide for you. It will pull you in every direction. It will distract you. It will overwhelm you. It will fill your time with things that feel urgent but aren't important. And before you know it, you've spent your energy building someone else's priorities instead of your own. That's why you need to take ownership. That's why you need to step back and ask yourself a simple but powerful question. What does it mean for me to make today count? Not in theory, not someday. Today. Because today is all you really have, yesterday is gone. Tomorrow is uncertain, but today is in your hands. And making today count doesn't mean doing something extraordinary. It means doing something intentional. It means showing up when it would be easier not to. It means doing the work even when you don't feel like it. It means choosing discipline over distraction. It means choosing growth over comfort. And let's be honest, comfort is seductive. Comfort tells you to stay where you are. Comfort tells you to avoid risk. Comfort tells you that you've done enough. But comfort doesn't build anything meaningful. Everything you want, every goal, every dream, every version of yourself that you admire exists outside of your comfort zone. And the only way to reach it is to step into discomfort daily. Not once, not occasionally, daily. That's what every single day mentality is about. It's about refusing to negotiate with your excuses, because your excuses will sound reasonable. They will tell you you're tired. They will tell you you're busy. They will tell you you deserve a break. And sometimes those things are true. But here's the danger. If you listen to those voices too often, they don't stay occasional. They become permanent. And suddenly, you're not someone who takes a break. You're someone who avoids effort. You're not someone who rests. You're someone who delays growth. That's how it happens. Not overnight. But over time. That's why you have to be intentional. That's why you have to remind yourself every single day that your future is not something that just happens to you. It's something you build, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. And the beautiful part is, you don't have to build it all at once. You just have to win today, just today. Show up today. Do the work today. Be disciplined today. Be focused today. Because when you stack enough good todays, together you create a great life. But if you keep postponing, if you keep saying, I'll start tomorrow, you end up in a loop where nothing ever really begins. And here's the hard truth. Tomorrow is the most dangerous word in your vocabulary because tomorrow feels safe. It feels like a plan. It feels like progress. But most of the time, tomorrow is just a delay. And if you keep delaying, you keep drifting. And if you keep drifting, you lose direction. And if you lose direction, you lose control. So don't wait. Don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait for the perfect mood. Don't wait for everything to align. Because it never will. There will always be challenges. There will always be distractions. There will always be reasons not to start. But the people who succeed, they start anyway. They move forward anyway. They act even when it's imperfect. Because they understand something most people don't. Action creates clarity. Not the other way around. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to take the next step, and then the next, and then the next. That's how momentum is built. And once you have momentum, everything becomes easier. Not because the work changes, but because you change. You become someone who follows through. You become someone who doesn't quit when it gets hard. And that identity, that self-trust is more valuable than any external success. Because once you trust yourself, you become unstoppable. You no longer rely on motivation. You no longer depend on circumstances. You no longer wait for permission. You act every single day. And here's the thing, this mentality doesn't just change what you achieve. It changes how you live. It gives you purpose. It gives you direction. It gives you control over your own life. And that's something most people never truly experience. They spend their lives reacting instead of creating. But you don't have to. You can decide right now that today matters, that your effort matters, that your choices matter, that your time matters. Because it does, more than you think. And one day, you're going to look back. You're going to look back at the life you built, the person you became, the path you walked. And you won't remember every single day. But those days, they will have shaped everything. So make them count. Not perfectly, not dramatically, but intentionally. Because success is not built in bursts of brilliance. It's built in quiet, consistent effort. It's built in the moments where you choose to keep going when it would be easier to stop. It's built in the days where nothing feels special, but you show up anyway. That's where the real transformation happens. That's where the real growth happens. That's where you prove to yourself who you are. And once you prove it to yourself, the world eventually sees it too. But by then, it won't matter as much. Because you'll know. You'll know that you didn't waste your days. You'll know that you didn't settle for average. You'll know that you didn't let your potential slip away. You'll know that you showed up every single day. And you made it count. Your consistency is a louder statement than any goal you announce. You can talk about ambition, you can declare your intentions, you can tell the world what you're going to become, but at the end of the day, none of that carries weight if your actions don't back it up. Words are easy. Words are comfortable. Words cost nothing. But consistency costs something every single day. It costs effort when you're tired. It costs focus when you're distracted. It costs discipline when you don't feel like doing what needs to be done. And that's exactly why it's so powerful. Because most people are not willing to pay that price consistently. We live in a world where it's easier than ever to announce goals. You can post them, share them, say them out loud, write them down, make them look inspiring. But there's a gap between saying and doing, and that gap is where most people lose momentum. That gap is where intentions fade. That gap is where motivation disappears. Because the truth is, goals don't change your life. Systems do. Habits do. Repetition does. The quiet, uncelebrated actions you take over and over again, those are the things that build something real. And the world doesn't respond to what you say you're going to do. It responds to what you repeatedly show you can do. Think about it. When you see someone who shows up every single day, who puts in the work regardless of how they feel, who follows through even when it's inconvenient, you don't need them to explain their goals to you. You can see it. You can feel it. Their consistency speaks for them. It tells you who they are. It tells you what they value. It tells you what they're building. And that's the kind of signal that cannot be faked. Because anyone can be intense for a day. Anyone can be passionate for a week. Anyone can start strong when the energy is high and the vision feels exciting. But very few people can stay consistent when the novelty wears off. Very few people can keep going when progress is slow. Very few people can continue when there's no immediate reward. That's where consistency becomes your advantage. Because consistency is not about doing something when it's easy. It's about doing something when it's hard, when it's boring, when it feels repetitive, when it feels like it's not making a difference yet. That's where most people stop. They want results quickly. They want validation early. They want to feel like their effort is paying off right away. And when that doesn't happen, they start questioning themselves. Is this working? Is this worth it? Should I try something else? And without realizing it, they break the one thing that actually creates results. They break their consistency. They start over. They reset. They abandon the process before it has time to compound. And that's the tragedy, because consistency only reveals its power over time. It's not dramatic in the beginning. It's not exciting at first. In fact, it often feels invisible. But just because something feels invisible doesn't mean it's not working. Think about how a seed grows. You plant it, you water it, you take care of it, and for a long time you don't see anything. Nothing above the surface, nothing that proves your effort is paying off. But beneath the surface, something is happening. Roots are forming. Strength is building. Foundation is being created. And then one day it breaks through. That's how consistency works. It builds beneath the surface before it shows above it. But most people never reach that breakthrough moment because they stop too early. They get discouraged by the lack of visible progress, and they assume it's not working. So they quit, and then they start something new. And then they quit again, and they keep repeating this cycle, not realizing that the problem isn't their goals, it's their lack of consistency. Because consistency requires patience. It requires trust. It requires the ability to keep going without immediate proof. And that's not easy. It goes against our instincts. It goes against our desire for quick results. It goes against the way we've been conditioned to expect instant gratification. But if you can master that, if you can stay consistent when it doesn't feel rewarding, you separate yourself immediately. Because now you're not dependent on emotions. You're not controlled by motivation. You're not waiting for the perfect moment. You're operating on commitment. And commitment is stable. Commitment doesn't fluctuate with your mood. Commitment doesn't disappear when things get difficult. Commitment shows up every single day. And over time, that consistency becomes your identity. You're no longer someone who is trying to do something. You become someone who does it, not occasionally, not when you feel like it, but consistently. And that identity shift is everything. Because once something becomes part of who you are, it stops feeling like a struggle. It becomes normal. It becomes automatic. It becomes expected. You don't question whether you're going to show up, you just do. And that's when real progress begins. Because now you're not wasting energy on decision making. You're not negotiating with yourself. You're not debating whether you should or shouldn't do the work. You've already decided. And that decision removes friction. It removes hesitation. It removes excuses. And what's left is action. Consistent, repeated action. That's what builds skill. That's what builds confidence. That's what builds results. Because confidence doesn't come from positive thinking. It comes from evidence. It comes from proving to yourself over and over again that you can follow through, that you can keep going, that you can stay disciplined. And every time you act consistently, you add another piece of evidence, another reason to trust yourself, another reminder that you're capable. And that self-trust, that belief in your own ability to execute is one of the most powerful assets you can have. Because once you have that, you stop doubting every step. You stop second-guessing your decisions. You stop relying on external validation. You know that if you keep showing up, results will come. Maybe not immediately. Maybe not exactly how you expect, but eventually. Because consistency, when applied long enough, always produces something. The question is, what are you being consistent with? Because consistency works both ways. If you're consistently distracted, you'll get better at being distracted. If you're consistently procrastinating, you'll get better at avoiding work. If you're consistently choosing comfort over growth, you'll build a life that reflects that. Consistency doesn't judge. It doesn't care whether your actions are productive or destructive. It just amplifies whatever you repeat. So if you want to change your life, you don't need to change everything at once. You just need to change what you do consistently. Because small actions, repeated daily, create massive outcomes over time. That's how transformation happens. Not in one big moment, but in thousands of small ones. And the key is to make those small actions non-negotiable, not optional, not dependent on how you feel, non-negotiable. Because the moment something becomes optional, it becomes inconsistent. And the moment it becomes inconsistent, it loses its power. That's why discipline is so important. Not because it makes you rigid, but because it makes you reliable. It ensures that you show up regardless of circumstances. And reliability builds momentum. Because when you show up today, it's easier to show up tomorrow. When you follow through once, it's easier to follow through again. And over time, that repetition creates a rhythm, a flow, a pattern of behavior that becomes hard to break. And that's exactly what you want. You want your positive habits to be stronger than your excuses. You want your routines to be stronger than your emotions. You want your consistency to be stronger than your doubts. Because doubts will come. There will be days where you question everything. There will be days where you feel like you're not making progress. There will be days where you feel like giving up. And in those moments, your goals won't save you. Your motivation won't save you. Your consistency will. Because consistency doesn't require you to feel confident. It doesn't require you to feel inspired. It just requires you to act. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes just showing up is the win. Sometimes just doing the work, even if it's not perfect, is what keeps you moving forward. And movement is everything. Because as long as you're moving, you're progressing. Maybe slowly, maybe imperfectly, But you're not stuck, and being stuck is what kills potential. Being stuck is what creates regret. Being stuck is what makes people feel like they're not capable. But the truth is, most people are capable. They just lack consistency. They start, but they don't continue. They try, but they don't persist. They want results, but they're not willing to stay in the process long enough to earn them. And that's where you have to be different. You have to be willing to stay committed, to stay disciplined, to stay consistent even when it's not exciting, even when it's repetitive, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Because something is changing. You are. Every single day you show up, you're becoming stronger, more focused, more resilient, more disciplined. And those qualities don't just appear overnight. They're built through repetition, through effort, through consistency. That's the real reward. Not just the external results, but the internal growth. The person you become in the process. Because at the end of the day, success is not just about what you achieve, it's about who you become while achieving it. And consistency shapes that person. It defines your character. It builds your discipline. It strengthens your mindset. And once those things are in place, everything else becomes possible. Because now you're not relying on chance. You're not hoping things will work out. You're creating outcomes through your actions, through your habits, through your consistency. And that's a position of power. Because when you control your actions, you influence your results. And when you influence your results, you shape your future, one day at a time, one action at a time, one decision at a time. That's how it's done. Not with grand gestures, not with sudden breakthroughs, but with steady, consistent effort. The kind that doesn't get attention, the kind that doesn't get applause, the kind that happens behind the scenes. That's where the real work is. That's where the real growth is. That's where the real difference is made. And if you can embrace that, if you can commit to showing up every single day, regardless of how you feel, you will build something most people never do. Because while they're talking, you're doing. While they're planning, you're executing. While they're waiting, you're progressing. And over time, that gap widens, slowly at first, but then faster and faster, until one day the difference is undeniable. Not because you said more, not because you announced more, but because you did more, consistently, relentlessly, without stopping, without needing recognition, without needing validation, just showing up again and again and again, and letting your actions speak so loudly that your goals become obvious without you ever having to say them out loud.